In this presentation, we're going to take a look at a review in regards to your professional sales class that you took. Whether you had Carol or Rick or maybe even Dave or took it online, there are some things that we just want to review and take a look at because that really is the foundation of going to the next step. Your professional sales class was a business to customer type sales course, and so we asked you to learn 7 steps of the sale. So this particular presentation that you're listening to is going to take a kind of review some of those things that you learned in your professional sales class. Now, whether you had Rick or Carol or Dave or took it online, we taught you 7 principles that really go into business to consumer sales, and that was the basis of your professional sales class. So I'm going to ask you right now to think about those 7 steps of the sale. Do you remember what they are? Now, if you are like most students that I have seen in the past, you're probably laughing right now because you don't necessarily remember the 7 steps of that sales process. But I bet you that you remember the item that you sold in that class. Unless you had it online, then obviously you didn't do a sales presentation. But I bet you could tell me what you sold in that class, which is fine. We do want to take a look at it because it is kind of the basis where we can go to the next level when it comes to what we're going to learn in this class. Here are those 7 steps of the sale that you learned in your principles class or professional sales, as we call it now, class. The very first step was that pre-approach, and in the pre-approach you learned things such as planning your sales call and getting ready to see your client or your customer. Really kind of sales training, if you will. And then the next was the approach that you learned. How are you going to talk to the customer? And because we were mostly focusing on a business to customer type sales atmosphere, we had you approach a customer saying things such as, are you finding everything okay today? We then moved into the presentation aspect, and the presentation piece in the 7 steps that you learned in your professional sales class really stemmed from questions, and you ask certain questions. I call the next 3 the shuns: presentation, demonstration, negotiation. All of those shuns become pretty important when it comes to that business to consumer sales call. So we give the presentation, or we ask the question under presentation, and then maybe we demonstrate it under demonstration. And then finally we go into negotiation. How much are you willing to spend for it? Are there anything, certain things that we might want to add to it? And then finally we have the close, which is the end of that transaction, where in most cases when we're talking business to customer, I'm giving you the product, you're giving me money, and then we close the sale. Finally, we have the servicing of the sale, and that's going to be, or also called follow-up. You might have heard it also called as follow-up. And either one is okay. Basically, what we're going to say is, after the sale is over, am I still going to be able to take care of you with any issues that you have? So if you buy a TV from me and it breaks, can you come back and get a new one if it's, during a certain amount of time? What am I going to do to keep you happy while you're not here? Now, I always tell a story about when I bought my car, my Saturn car, the second one. After we had purchased the car, about a week later, I got in the mail a huge box full of bread and cookies and baked goods from Tina. She was the one who sold us the car, and I just thought that was the greatest thing, well, since sliced bread. But either way, I remember it. And so when we were going for our 3rd automobile, we went back to Tina and bought another Saturn. I'm not going to tell you that was the most successful thing, but that's what we did. So what's the difference, you're probably asking yourself, to what you learned in professional sales and what you're going to learn in this course? And I can tell you that we're looking at 2 different kind of styles. Now, your principles class or your professional sales class, they were really small purchases. They refer small purchase amounts when we start talking about money-wise and how much financial backing there needs to be. In this class, which is an advanced sales class, business-to-business sales, we're really talking about large purchase amounts, large amounts of cash that change hands. In some cases, you can work for a corporation that you do business-to-business sales, and you are working with millions of dollars. In the first principles in your professional sales class, you did 7-step method. I'm going to tell you in this method that we're going to look at with SPIN, there's only 4. Now, look at that. I've already cut you down to a little bit more than half, but still, it's 3 less than you had to remember before, and that's always good, right? Also, when we talk about in your professional sales class, that was really a short-term relationship. And now when we're looking at business-to-business and advanced selling, we're looking at long-term relationship building, and that becomes extremely important when we're talking about going back to large amounts of money. You got to have a good relationship. I would just not give millions of dollars to anybody. If I ask for $1, you might give it to me. If I asked you for $100, you would think about it first, unless we had a really good relationship. Then you may give it to me. Selling in your professional sales class, you as a seller did a lot of talking. I mean, you were really pushing it on, and you were really wanting to get your buyer to buy, and so you did a lot of talking. I'm going to suggest that in this one, I don't want you to do very much talking at all. It's really going to be about questions. And so the buyer does most of the talking in a business-to-business sales call. At least that's the hope and the technique. In your principles class, we begin thinking about your style. And that's kind of a neat aspect of things, right? Everybody's got a style. If you look at your teachers, for example, Rick's got a style of teaching. He's really great at telling stories and getting you involved. And sometimes you leave the class and you're like, oh my gosh, I totally just learned something. Where Carol has her style, and Dave has his style, and I have my style, and they all are a little bit different, but that's good because we needed to find our own style. And so when you were in your principles class, you were kind of delving into what your sales style is. What kind of salesperson are you? And I'm going to say that in this one, we're going to even delve deeper into your selling style. And so it's really kind of a unique aspect that we're going to look at in this semester. Finally, we want to look at how are the courses that you took before with this course the same, because there are obviously going to be some similarities in the courses. First is that the seller needs to you need to believe in what you're selling, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You have to believe in what you sell. It's very, very difficult to sell something that you don't believe in. And maybe you've been in that situation where you've had to sell a product or a service, what have you, and you just didn't really believe in it. Very, very difficult to do. So you truly have to have a passion for what you're going to be selling. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have a passion for sales, but you do have to have a passion for what you're selling. Relationships need to be created in both aspects, whether it was in your business-to-customer selling or business-to-business selling. The relationships need to be created. Now, the extent of those relationships can be really, really different, but they do need to have that creativity piece in there. The seller is the link that brings the process together. Remember that. The seller is the link that brings the process together. Meaning this, the seller is the one in both places to act as the facilitator, to act as the guide, to act as the partner. And so they really have this important piece in that buyer and seller relationship. They're the experts. They're the ones who know. And so it's important that you bring that off in both atmospheres, if it's a business to customer sales or business to business sales. And finally, we must understand that sociology of buying. Now, I've stated this many times, and if you've had me in another class, you know that I say this. Marketing in general is a science. It's a social science. And to be able to understand behavior and why we do things and why we buy things and all of that information is really, really important for a salesperson, because the more that we know about buying, the better we can be at selling. So this was your introduction piece to business with a review in regards to business to customers. Your next view is going to be your chapter 1, which is going to take a look at the spin selling hardcover piece and model itself.